Where do the Falcons stand in the NFC South after all the transactions they've made so far in free agency? That is the question we are going to answer on today's episode and compare Atlanta's offseason to the other members of the division. So let's just start by refreshing everyone's memories on how the NFC South shaked up last season, with the Bucs winning the division at 9-8, the Saints finishing second with the same record, the Falcons finishing third, getting a third-place schedule, keep in mind, so not too shabby, and then the Panthers finishing in the cellar, going 2-15. So what I want to do on today's video is sort of run through all four NFC South teams, talk about what they've been doing so far in the offseason to catch you guys up to speed, and then we'll talk about what I grade them and where I think all four of these teams are going to finish this time next year. So let's start with the New Orleans Saints here. Key additions I've got for them, not really good. Chase Young and Willie Gay, by far the best additions I've got down. Offensively, backup quarterback Nathan Peterman, he sucks. Wide receiver Cedric Wilson, he's good for maybe 300 yards a season. They lost Jameis, Michael Thomas, Malcolm Roach, and Marcus May, some of the more notable players that they have moved on from so far in the offseason. I would say the biggest name on screen, though, outside of losing Michael Thomas, who hasn't done anything since 2019, would be Chase Young coming over from the Commanders and the 49ers, his last two stops where he was traded midseason. Now, the uneasy thing about Chase Young is, if you guys missed it, he signed with the Saints, but they also discovered he's got a real issue with his neck that he's getting surgery on. So they actually didn't guarantee a whole lot of that money in his contract, and New Orleans could move on very easily if the medicals don't check out for Chase Young soon. Now, as for what New Orleans has to work with in the draft, they've got a pretty par for the course-ish draft picks. They've got a first, a second, a couple of fifths, and some sixths. So no third, no fourth, but they pick 14th and 45. So 2 picks in the top 50. You can get 2 quality players there. When it comes to the Saints, though, and their offseason, the big question I have is, do they find any playmakers in the draft to elevate them from where they've been stuck the last 3 seasons at that 7-9 win range? I don't think it's really a question about Derek Carr, right? I understand that all eyes tend to gravitate towards the quarterback, but I think we know who Derek Carr is as a quarterback, or at least we should by this point in his career. So I don't think the question is whether or not Carr can kick him into a higher gear or anything. No, I want to know is, can they find someone in round 1 or round 2 that can kind of get them out of this rut that they have been in? And hopefully not is the answer to that question. So for me, if I'm grading the Saints offseason so far, I'd give them a C-. They are the model of kicking the can down the road, right? And that is fine and all if you win. They're not winning, and they still are making themselves in a hole every single offseason that they can't really afford to get themselves out of with nice big free agent signings. So for me, the Saints, below average offseason thus far. Now, who do you think has a better record in 2024? The Falcons or the Saints? Drop an ATL. That's the only correct answer down below in the comments section. All right, let's switch gears and let's talk about the Panthers offseason so far. Their key additions, I would say head coach Dave Canales, wide receiver Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh, and then 2 offensive linemen, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, really highly paid interior offensive linemen from Miami and Seattle. Now, they lost a handful of pieces on their defense, Frankie Louvu, Yutu Gross-Modus, and then some other guys, especially in the secondary, Shaq Griffin, Von Bell, Jeremy Chin. Now, when you look at Carolina's draft picks for 2024, of course, they don't have their first. That belongs to the Bears. They do have the 33rd overall pick. They pick first in a handful of rounds, like round number 2, round number 3, round number 4. And they have a second rounder that they got after trading away. Oh, that would have been a good one to include in key losses as well. The edge rusher going to the New York Giants, Brian Burns. So the big question I've got for the Panthers, though, is does Bryce Young just suck, or will he improve with the weapons around him? I do think the Panthers have made as good as an effort with the lack of resources they've had so far in the offseason to try and maximize Bryce Young, right? They bring in 2 offensive guards to make sure he's standing upright. They trade for a wide receiver. When the draft rolls around, I bet they take another receiver or 2. So I do think this is a sink or swim year for Bryce Young. Ultimately, is it a perfect scenario? No. When you're taking first overall, though, that's the kind of talent or the belief that's in there that you can elevate a team over some issues, right? Cam Newton came into Carolina, the worst team in the NFL the season prior, and he had them rocking and rolling very quickly afterwards because he was the real deal. For me, we should know after 2024 if Bryce Young stays healthy all year, whether or not he's good or he just sucks. So I'll give the Panthers offseason a B, though. I do like the offensive lineman signing. That definitely helps to protect your franchise quarterback. And ultimately, without a first-rounder, we'll have to wait and see what they get in the draft. But I feel like with what the Panthers have had to work with, a B, maybe even a B-minus grade, seems fair for the team. All right, let's switch gears and let's talk about the Buccaneers now. Their key additions, I'm going to say a lot of re-additions, right? I'm kind of cheating here. But they brought back Baker and they brought back Mike Evans. Those are two very big names that they were able to retain. Running back Chase Edmonds, they brought in Jordan Whitehead, who started his career off with Tampa before going to the Jets, now comes back south. Key losses, their center Ryan Jensen retired. Devin White went to the Eagles. Shaq Barrett went to the Dolphins. And then cornerback Carlton Davis was traded to the Lions. Now, here's what the Bucs have to work with in the draft. They've got pretty much your standard picks, their first, their second. They've got 2/3. They got an extra third for the Carlton Davis trade. So they've got 4 picks in the top 100. They've got some good ammunition to work with. So the question I've got for Tampa Bay right now is, will running it back work, or are they playing with a false sense of confidence, right? Are they a team that just got a little bit lucky playing in a division that only required 9 wins to go host a playoff game, and next year if the Falcons were to win 10 or 11, the Bucs are sunk because they didn't really improve? Or are they going to build off of last year and turn a 9-win team into a 10 or 11-win team, right? Is it running it back a good idea for Tampa Bay, or should they have recognized last season was fun, but we shouldn't expect to replicate that next year because we probably won't be hosting a playoff game every year if we win 9 games. For me, I give the Buccaneers a B as well. I think it was smart to bring back Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. They don't seem like they're a franchise that's really good at rebuilding, hence them sucking for a very long time before Tom Brady got there. So I don't fault them for trying to keep the band together. They did move on from some other pieces like Devin White, which I don't think is a great loss to them. But I'll give them a B for now. All right. With that being said, before we talk about the Atlanta Falcons, who do you think is going to win the NFC South? Will it be Atlanta? Will it be New Orleans, Tampa Bay, or Carolina? Be honest. Let me know down below in the comment section. Now we get to your hometown Falcons. Additions I've got: Raheem Morris, Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. So a lot of offensive pieces coming to ATL. Losses: Mack Hollins went to the Bills. Jonnu Smith went to the Dolphins. Jeff Okudah went to the Texans. I've got a question mark next to Calais Campbell because he hasn't gone anywhere yet, but they also haven't re-signed him yet. And if they were to lose him, well, he was tied with Bud Dupree for the team lead in sacks last year. So that would be a bit of a loss when it comes to your pass rush, given you also haven't added anyone at that spot yet. Now, what picks do the Falcons have to work with? They've got their first, they've got their second, they've got 2/3, one coming from Jacksonville because of the Calvin Ridley trade, a 4th, a 5th, and a pair of 6s. Now, the question I've got for Atlanta is Kirk Cousins cooked after the injury, or will he pick up where he left off? Because if he does just pick up where he left off, this Falcons team, if their defense holds up, is going to be just a hot knife through butter in the NFC South. 9 wins won the division last year. You get to play 6 games against the Bucs, Saints, and Panthers. That's an easy 5-1 right there if Kirk Cousins is able to pick up where he left off in 2023 when he threw for 2,300 yards and 18 touchdowns in only 8 games played. Now, if you're curious, what if Kirk never got injured? Well, I crunched the numbers, and here are his pro-rated 2023 stats, meaning if he continued to play at the trend he was on before his injury in Week 8 against the Packers, he would have finished, and I actually checked my math twice, with 4,900 yards, 38 touchdowns. I didn't realize truly how great of a start he had to the year. Now, the wins weren't necessarily there. They were 4-4 at that point, So that's definitely a good note for Atlanta of, hey, Kirk can play well, but he's not necessarily a quarterback that's going to make the big-time plays in the crunch moment at the very, very end to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But I still think you put a good roster around Kirk Cousins. He can hold his own, and he can keep you in games. He can give you leads, and it's up to the defense to protect those leads. So I'll give Atlanta a B-plus grade so far this offseason. The reason why I'm not giving them an A is they have not addressed edge rusher yet, and maybe they will soon, whether that's the draft or some other free agent signings. But for now, a huge gaping need on this team is still very much there, and it's not like Kirk Cousins has this incredible history of being a very winning quarterback. Like, Kirk's a good quarterback. It's hard to find good quarterbacks. Just because he's not a top 3 or top 5 quarterback doesn't mean he's bad. But I think the Atlanta Falcons felt like he was our best option. And I tend to agree. Like, if you want to get the best quarterback play for 2024, Kirk Cousins was the man for that job. Sure, you can test your luck in the draft, but the draft is just that, luck. Like, it's a crapshoot. It's a gamble. You don't know what to get out of the draft, right? So I don't mind Atlanta pursuing Kirk Cousins, but if they expect Kirk Cousins to just step in there alone and elevate this team single-handedly to 11 or 12 wins, they're going to find themselves where the Vikings were very often, which was up and down. Good 1 year, 500 the next year, good the next year, back to 500. Kirk has shown he's a top 10 quarterback in my eyes, closer to 10 than 1, but he still needs a little bit of help. He can't quite do it all on his own. So will Kirk Cousins throw 20-plus touchdowns? I picked that number specifically because the last Falcons quarterback to throw for 20 or more touchdowns was Matt Ryan in 2020. So we're talking 2021, 2, 3 straight years of less than 20 touchdowns from your starting quarterback. Not very good. Can Kirk end that streak? Now, to wrap up the show, I figured why not share my predictions for the NFC South. I went 11-6 for Atlanta. I was kind of in between 10-7 and 11-6. I think 10-7-1 feels like a good record for this team, given they were 7 wins last year. I'm also just kind of sipping the offseason Kool-Aid of it's just more fun to be optimistic in March than to be, doom and gloom. So I'll go with 11-6 for Atlanta. I think the Bucs probably pick up one more win than where they were last year, 10-7. I think the Saints finally have their cap as a myth philosophy catch up to them, and it's a big implosion year down in the Big Easy. The Panthers double their win total, so that's good. The bad news is they finished with 4 wins, so I still don't think Carolina is getting out of the gutter. Now, before we get on out of here, a few days ago, I was honest with you all that I don't have a perfect bracket when it comes to blank is a Falcon, and I have said Dallas Turner is a Falcon. So I turned it over to you and say, if Dallas Turner does not get picked by the Falcons, if Atlanta passes on Dallas Turner, I do want that out clause. If he goes at number 7, then I don't want to be liable. What are some fair punishments? And here's what you guys came up with. I got pie to the face. That's doable. I like that one. Clown suit with the makeup. Okay. Video and Saints gear. I think that just punishes you, the viewer, as well. Shot of hot sauce. I do hate hot sauce. So that would definitely be a punishment that fits the crime. 1,000 push-ups. I could use that. Maybe like over a span of, like 2,000 days, half a push-up a day. Drink a raw egg. That's some Arnold Schwarzenegger shit, but sure. Shave my eyebrows. Someone else said shave my head. I am not joining a middle school swim team. No, that is not happening. Hot chip challenge. Archangel. Absolutely not. No. I'm just a pussy, and I will not do the hot chip challenge. Someone said drunk episode. I don't think that's much of a punishment, but I'd love to be a part of like an episode of like Drunk History. All-time show at like 1 a.m. when you came home from the bars. So I'm on board. Boss might not be, but okay. If I say the viewer said so, that has to hold up in the Chat Sports Court of Law. And then finally, we got 3 shots for me saying Bill Belichick, Justin Fields, and Dallas Turner allegedly, may or may not have said it, probably not on YouTube, are Falcons. So 1 shot for each one of those misses. That also fits the crime. So of those 10, what do we think is a good one? We'll try and like narrow down our list, and then we'll pick one as we get closer to the draft. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy March Madness, and we will catch up later.